lesson that we do. We do reading in several different ways. Okay, so maybe you're already quite familiar with Charlotte Mason. Julie, let me ask that before I start. Does this group study Charlotte Mason a little bit, or
yeah, our school is based on TG Ed and Charlotte Mason, and we try to implement those principles as much as we can as distant mentors, but we rely mostly on the mothers to work with their children using those methods. And for this reason, we have invited you here to mentor the moms a little bit to know what they can do during the week.
Okay. All right. So as you know, if you've looked into Charlotte Mason a little bit, there are many different things that the children do in smaller segments than anything I'd ever thought of. You know, when I was going to school, in public school, we had long periods of time for every class. And Charlotte Mason, I noticed, does many, many subjects and just much going on with the children all at one time. We just read in the back of book 3 in one of the appendices a few months ago that, you know, something like the 9-year-olds had 23 different books they were learning from at the same time, which sounds overwhelming. But when you watch it in action, it's really simple and it's real darling. It just kind of feels like a mommy playing school with her kids in a real sweet way. So let me tell you what we do with our interview. We try to have I create a time where each child can report on what they have been doing on their own, and they can also do certain things with me that they aren't yet doing on their own. So if I have a young child, for example, everything is with me, like a 6 to 8-year-old. Everything they do is with me during that interview. I don't send them to do anything alone. But if I have an 8-year-old, about half of what they do is with me, and half of what they do, they're doing away from me. Now, if I have a 12-year-old, they come and do very, very little with me. They're mostly reporting on all these things they do away from me. So that is why I gave Julie a schedule, and the details of it aren't important, but if you could just post it and let me draw their attention to an 8-year-old's, someone between 8 and 12. Look at the middle. Look at Joseph on row G. Can everyone see that? Column G, I should say. Stewardship. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, can everyone see the whole thing? Can you see that, everyone, down to 1:30 p.m.?
Yes, I can. Okay. So let's just go one by one, and I want to show you how many of those he does away from me and how many he does with me. So, well, actually, all of those are done away from me. So that's what I want to show you. How many things are done away from me? And then I will talk about the interview, and you'll see what he does with me. So stewardship, those are just his jobs that he does. They're the same each day, so we call the stewardship. Latin and memorizing. Each block of time, you'll notice, is 30 minutes. So he does 15 minutes of Latin, 15 of memorizing. Then he comes to his interview, which we'll cover in just a moment. Then he does his reading 1. It's one subject of reading. And then he does his Spanish. Then piano, violin, his reading 2. We'll go over that also, but it's just another subject of reading. Okay, and then he does a little job. He cleans up the snack. Then we do our exercise. I actually do that with him, with all of the kids. Then he does another job, preps lunch. We eat lunch. Then he helps clean up lunch. And then we do nature study and nature walk, which we actually all do together. Okay, so that was just to quickly show you how much he's doing away from me and how much he's doing with me. Now, let's talk about the interview, and I'll show you what he does with me every day. I've done interviews that are an hour each, and those are my favorite. I've done interviews that last 45 minutes. Those are okay. Right now, our interviews are half an hour. It's too short. We have too much squished into too little time. So we're trying to deal with it in the best way we can. But you can really work this however it works best for your family. The first thing they do when they sit down for the interview, they recite to me whatever they've been memorizing. And we memorize 3 different types of things. The first thing we memorize is scriptures, like a scripture mastery. We go off a scripture mastery list from LDS seminary. And they'll work on it for maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks. Just whenever they get it done, then they pass it off. Once they pass it off, they start working on a poem. It could be as small as a nursery rhyme. It could be a 5-page poem. But whenever they get that done, then they move on to a map. So they're only actually working on one of those 3 at a time. And like you see in the schedule, his little memorizing segment is only 15 minutes long. It's on the 3rd line down. So he'll work on it 15 minutes a day. So when he sits down for the interview, he just recites the portion that he has done. And it only takes a few minutes unless they're at the end of a very long poem. It could take, 10 minutes. But normally with children 8 to 12, it just takes a few minutes, maybe 3 minutes or less to recite the portion that they've done. Now, this is another Charlotte Mason thing. We require a very high standard of perfection. So whatever part, when he first sits down to recite, I say, show me how far you are going to go today. And he shows me, because I don't exactly know how much he did in his 15 minutes. And if he shows me, the first 3 stanzas I have done, then he's accountable to do them perfect. So by accountable, I mean if he doesn't, he just will work on it again in his free time that day and pass it off. So he isn't required to do a certain amount, but he's required to do it well, whatever amount he says that he's done. And I want to say one small detail on that. Just by doing that one thing alone, holding them accountable so that they fix in their free time whatever wasn't done to a high standard in their lesson time. Children of all ages and of all mental capacities. We have a couple of, we have 2 children on this list who are on the autistic spectrum, and at different times in their life and at different kinds of diets they've been on, they have more and less mental ability and control over their concentration, I would say. And no matter what child you're looking at here, and no matter what age or what their mental state is, all of them function at a very, very, very high level, just because we've set it up with a little accountability. So nobody's getting a punishment, but they just get one chance to sit down and do what they said they would do. And then if it doesn't work out, they will just go work on it in their free time. And as you can imagine, they're really quick at getting it perfected when they do that in their free time. They don't want to waste their free time. And by holding them slightly accountable like that, it helps them learn not to waste what I would call my important time. Because what I've put into this schedule is of greatest interest to me. And by holding them accountable in their free time, they are learning the value on the scheduled time. There is a loud, really loud
yes.
thing. Okay. I didn't know what to call it, so I just called it a thing.
Someone is cleaning the kitchen at my house, but I will turn up my mic.
Okay. Okay, so before I go on to the next thing we do well, no, I think I should go on. Why don't you make note if you have any questions about the recitation? To make sure we don't run out of time, I'll just go on. Okay, the second thing that they do in the interview is narration. And this takes longer than anything we do in the interview. And ideally, it could go 20 minutes. Right now, I don't have time for it to go 20 minutes. So sadly, I have to cut them off at 10. But it really could go on 20 minutes or more. But the children sit down and they tell me what they read. And they'll tell me from they're reading 1 and they're reading 2 because they have 2 different subjects every day. And this is the most wonderful, wonderful part of the interview. I actually wish it could go on for an hour. Charlotte Mason says that when children start narrating, they begin real choppy and they don't quite know what to say. And then over time, they become very fluent and their thoughts flow beautifully. And I've just seen that happen in our home. And it's so fun to watch children narrate. I just feel like it's a little talent show every day at these interviews. And I'm so proud of them. And I'm just delighted to hear what they have to say. And one detail to remember on the narration is that the listener, me, the listener is not to be quizzical.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
I apologize. There's a lot of women in the other Zoom room. We didn't realize that it was over here. We've been over in the one that's on from the webpage. So I'll go tell them where.
Julie, is this link the post for the in-service link or a different link?
It's a different link.
I will jump out and take care of that.
Okay. Sorry about that. I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you, Sarah.
I've been over there too.
Did we lose Keri?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, go ahead, Keri. There you are.
Should I keep going? Okay, and do you want me to just go where I've been, even though new people are coming?
Yes, and I've got it recorded so they can come watch it after.
Okay. All right. So one thing to note on the narration is that the listener is not listening in order to quiz the child and make sure that they read. The listener is listening in order to give the child someone who cares that they can tell it to. And the more, it's real easy to show interest in it because if you use living books, they are very, very interesting. So it's not a difficult thing to do. It's actually really natural and fun. But the more interest you show and the more they narrate, the better they get. And I'll just repeat it. I'm amazed every day at how much they have to tell about the books they read. It's absolutely beautiful. This little habit of narration is my very favorite part. Now, one thing that we do right after they narrate, we open up our timeline and we add to it if there is something from their narration that can be added to the timeline. And that is just fun, and it helps us keep everything straight over the months. It helps us see where Bible times overlap, or where Bible stories are overlapping other historical stories and everything else. And also, I've found the timeline is a really good math project for the children between 8 and 12, because there's just to make their own timeline and to make it right and to add somebody it's a little arithmetic every day. Now, the fourth thing we do in the interview is they will write their alphabet quickly in cursive just to keep up on all the letters. We find in the copy work and in their written narrations that they don't always write capital cursive Q or lowercase z. It just doesn't come up very often. So we just quickly write our alphabet at the beginning to keep it polished. And that takes about 1 minute. We actually do a half alphabet. We'll do capitals A through O, and the next day capital space, half the alphabet, and the next day lowercase, the second half of the alphabet. Then they do their copy work in front of me, and we have 3 different things that we do copy work from, and they're the same three things that they memorize that we went over earlier. So the first is a scripture. They'll copy from a scripture until they get that scripture copied. They may do it in 1 day, or they may do it, throughout the whole week if it's a long scripture. And then when that's finished, they work on a poem. And when that's finished, they work on a map. And we try to keep it coordinated the best we can with what they're memorizing. So if they're learning the map of Europe, it's nice if they're doing copy work on the map of Europe. It helps them to memorize it faster. And some details about the copy work is we hold the same high level of perfection. So Charlotte Mason teaches if they copy something wrong, you quickly erase it or cover it before they have time to really take a mental picture of it. And you erase it and you have them do it over. And as soon as my children can successfully do 1 word perfectly on their first try every day, then we move to 2 words. So we're not assigning 14 words while they're continually messing it up and having to start over and rewrite 14 over and over. We work up to it. So say they're on 14 words and they've been doing it right for 3 or 4 days on their first try, then they would move on to 15 words. And I just think it's really cute, the pride they take in their work. And they, I don't mean pride, I don't see them comparing themselves to anyone else because nobody's watching these interviews, but they definitely take it seriously, I should say. They'll say, oh, if I get it right tomorrow, my first try, I'll be on 16 words. And they're so excited. I just think that's beautiful. That's something for them to think about as they're falling asleep at night instead of silliness. So I love these little challenges they get every day, and they take them very seriously. Okay, now we have the reading portion of the interview. And this usually takes us about 5 minutes. It's just a little reading exercise where they gain a lot of little skills during this short 5 minutes. We read something that I would say is above them, that's difficult for them to understand, that they may not understand on their own if they read it. And we quickly point out, let me back up. In this reading lesson, we do 2 different things. We do scriptures or poems. And I just realized, since I have a 7-year-old that's starting now, he's starting to memorize because he's just almost 8. He's starting on maps and he doesn't know how to read them. So I realized one of his reading lessons will fall into that rotation of scripture, poems, and map. A map could make a very nice reading lesson also, because if they're going to be writing it and memorizing it, same thing, it'll just help ingrain it in their mind, and they need to learn how to pronounce those countries anyway. So now, starting now, our reading lesson will fall into that same rotation: scriptures, poems, and maps. And I will look at the scripture quickly and I'll scan it, and I will find the words that they don't know yet and write them down on a list and teach them those words if you've studied Charlotte Mason, you teach it by memorization, by sight reading. So you just say, firmament, and they repeat firmament. And then you say heavens, and they repeat heavens. And then you say created, and they repeat created. And then as soon as they've got the list memorized, we go to that scripture and they get to read it. Oh, can I just have a 60-second break. My husband's been gone to China 3 weeks. 60-second intermission.
I am so sorry, everyone, that you were stuck in another room. Did you get the link from the Facebook page?
That was the set where we figured out where to get it when we got to the right place. But the first time we got it for this from the Monarch web work, just from the Educator Inservice page.
Oh.
So there's a set classroom for Educator Inservice, Julie, at the classroom page.
Oh, okay.
I just assumed that was the link that had been grabbed. It didn't even occur to me to check. Sorry.
No, that's okay. On my Zoom controller here, I've got an Educator Inservice and my link. So I must have given you the wrong link then.
Yeah, we'll chat afterwards.
Sure.
And look at the one I have is from that master document in the drive. So
Okay.
maybe if you wouldn't mind checking that master document. That's where I grabbed the original one from.
Okay, and Keri's back, so we'll go ahead and go to her. And Keri, whenever you want that copy back again, I will put it up. I just wanted to see everybody at once.
Excuse me, just
Okay.
1 second. Since we didn't come for 15 or 20 minutes, I'm just a little bit lost. Could you just tell me in 20 seconds what I caught in scriptures, poems, maps, but I need some context. This is step 4 of an interview. Okay. And you're discussing step 4. Okay.
And this is going to be recorded. This is recorded.
Okay, so yes, this is an interview. I'm just listing, the 8 or 9 things on an interview. So that was the reading lesson. And that, I guess, was the 6th thing. Okay, so if it is a beginner reader, I do what I just said. I pick out the words they don't know yet and I write them on a list. They quickly memorize them. Takes just a couple of minutes. And then they get to read them in context, which is the fun part. So it's kind of boring on the list, and then as soon as they have it memorized, they get to read it in context, and then they quickly narrate to me what they read. Okay, so on a 6-year-old, it might be, and God created heaven and earth. And then I say, what did that say? And they say, Heavenly Father made the heaven and the earth. And then we go on. If it's an older child who already reads, but we're just practicing reading on a higher level, I ask them to look at the text and pick out the words that they know they don't know. And they tell me. And then I tell them, I put it on the list, tell them what the words mean, and we'll tell them what the words are. Then I tell them to pick out any words they don't know the meaning of. Now that they can pronounce all the words, which ones do they not know the meaning of? And we more often than not look up the meaning to make sure that we can get it accurately. But if it's something real simple, I just tell them the meaning. And once they have the words memorized and the meanings memorized, then they read it. Same thing. And after they've read it, they narrate to me what they read. And one very interesting thing that this little miniature narration is training them to do, and also their larger narration, is training them with their attention span. And I've noticed the longer we do it, they can do more lines at a time, more paragraphs at a time. And that's the idea. The idea is that they can go away and read for half an hour and come tell you everything. And that's what I'm seeing. We do the reading lesson on a higher level, and it's difficult and it's quick. We do it a little tiny bit, get it over with. Then they go read these other living books that are slightly easier, and they read them for half an hour or 15-minute segments during the day. And they come tell me everything. They go on and on and on. Like I said, they could go on for an hour on some of them. Okay, now the last thing I do in the interview is, well, it's 2 things, but I rotate every other day. It's Plutarch and picture study. So we do kind of an A day, B day rotation. So if it's our Plutarch day, it is like another reading lesson, but this time I'm reading it to them. And Plutarch's Lives, is difficult for an 8 to 12-year-old, I think. And so it's an even harder reading lesson. And we do the very same thing. I look through the text. I quickly pick out the words that I think they don't know. This time I pick out the words to save time because there are many words. I just pick them out and write them on the list. And then we discuss each one, and then I read it to them. And after a certain segment that I feel is appropriate for that child, then I stop and have them narrate to me. For some children, it's half a sentence, half a line for some of them. And the longer we do it consistently, they just gain and gain and gain in that ability to concentrate and hold their attention on it. And I am surprised every day that we do Plutarch how much they can understand of a big long sentence that goes on and on and on that you think will just lose them. So you see we have 3 different kinds of reading that we cover in the interview. They narrate what they read on their own. That's the easiest level. They read something more difficult to me. That's the middle level. And then I read something even more difficult to them. And that Plutarch section is very, very short. We only do 5 minutes on it. Ideally, I would do it for 10 minutes. We're just short on time right now on our schedule. The other thing we rotate with when we're not doing Plutarch is picture study. And we just have several beautiful art books from the great masters. And I just choose a picture out of one of them. And I ask them to stare at it for 5 minutes, taking in every detail that they can mentally. And then I close it up and ask them to tell me what they saw. This is the first level of picture study. Something we do very soon after is I ask them to draw what they saw. But this first level is just them describing it. And it's fun to ask them questions. How do you think the girl was feeling? How do you think that whole family is feeling? What kind of man do you think that is? What do you think he does for a living? Anyway, we just go on. Often scenes from the Bible are these paintings, and it's fun to see if they can guess what it is with a few guided questions or on their own. Okay, there is another really fun thing we used to do in our interviews, and now we don't. We do it while we work on handicraft projects, but I'll just mention it quickly because it's fun. You put classical music on, and you stay with the same composer for a long, long time, months at a time, and you just listen to their pieces over and over and over until you start to get a feel for what that composer sounds like. And then you rotate to another one. And so now we turn it on while we're crocheting or carving or something. But I used to do it as part of the interview. We would just put the little headphones in and they would listen for 5 minutes and just concentrate on it. And we didn't do any follow-up. We just let them listen and think about whatever they wanted to. So that comprises our interview. And now, does anyone have any questions about the interview? And after that, does anyone have any questions that they want to ask about the schedule?
Can I just go through my list and make sure that I got it all in the order? Do you like to stick to a certain order? Do you think that has importance or a certain flow that you like?
I like doing the recitation very first because they've just worked so hard to get it in their mind. I'd like them to sit down and get kind of
relax for the rest of it.
Exactly. It's a little bit of a performance. Yeah. And then,
okay.
Oh, go ahead. And then I do kind of like to do the narration next because for the same reason, it's fresh on their mind. it's as, it's as fresh as it's going to be, if I don't put it off till the end. And then, no, the others, I just kind of made that up for my own. I think as you do, the longer you do it, you figure out what you like.
So I had written down the recitation, narration, dictation, copywork, timeline, maps, a reading lesson, and then the rotation of Plutarch or picture study. And then you used to do the classical music, but now you do it with your handicrafts, which, by the way, I like that too. I like doing it with handicrafts. Did I miss anything that you like to do?
Okay, the map is part of the copywork.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't have its own section. It shows up in the recitation, it shows up in the copywork, and it shows up in the reading lesson now.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that was. So number 1, I'll just say them real fast. Number 1 was recitation. Number 2 was narration. Number 3 was timeline. Oh, I forgot to say this. We also do a little math thing, but right now we're doing so much math in our timeline because we're in the middle of all the patriarchs in the Bible. So we just stopped our math for a minute because it was taking a lot of time. So we also do little arithmetic drills, just little things where we'll practice our multiplication or learn what a fraction is. Just little math that they would do with me. At 12, I like them to go do their math alone. So that goes with timeline. It's timeline / math, and that just slipped my mind because we haven't done it for a few weeks. 4th was that they would write their alphabet. 5th was copywork. I haven't done dictation, but dictation is another level of copywork. It's above copywork. It's something we'll move on to as they become more perfected in their copywork. 6th was the reading lesson, including scriptures, poems, and maps. 7th was Plutarch / picture study. And I do want to say one more thing on the copywork. I was describing to you what an 8 to 12-year-old would do in my home for an interview. But as they perfect their copywork, like I said, they would move on to dictation. And as they perfect their dictation, they would move on to written narrations, which happens at our house right around 12. My daughter's almost 12, and she's just about ready to do written narrations. And the same happened with my son when he was just about 12. So, the reason the dictation is a step above the copywork is because they don't have anything to look at. They are just writing off of what you say. And then the written narration is definitely a step above that because they have to decide what to say and then write it. So there are 3 levels there of the writing that I didn't mention before. So I guess I have 7 things here on this list.
Keri, I guess I'm not familiar enough with the Charlotte Mason way that you're doing things. I don't really understand. Are you doing this every day? Is this I'm not familiar. I don't understand the interview. I mean, this is what you're doing for school every day. I'm a little bit confused.
Okay. Julie, will you put the schedule on and I'll just refer to it for a minute? This is just a sample schedule that we're using at my house right now. The details aren't important, but I want to show you let's highlight Joseph again, who's between 8 and 12. So he does some work, that's his stewardship. Everything you see here, most of what you see here, he does alone. He does his work alone. I'm very nearby. He does his Latin. Actually, that's wrong. He does it with his teacher online. He does it away from me, though. He does his memorizing by himself. Each block is 30 minutes, so if it says Latin / memorizing, that means 15 minutes of each. Then he comes to this interview where he does those 7 things that we just listed. But part of those 7 is he is reporting on these things on this schedule list that he is doing away from me. He's coming to report them to me at the interview. But part of the interview is, and I would say the greater part of it, is me doing things with him. So there's the interview. So go down. Then there's reading 1/Spanish. That means he reads his subject number 1 for 15 minutes. Then he goes to his Spanish lesson, which is with someone. It's online. Then he goes to piano, which he does alone, unless it is his lesson day. Then he goes to violin, which he does alone, unless it's his lesson day. Then he's with his teacher. Then he goes to reading number 2, which he does alone. Then he does a little job, cleans up snack, exercises with me, lunch prep he does alone, a kitchen job, and then nature study and nature walk is with me. So really, he does most of what he does with someone. It's just not always me. Most of what he does is with someone. Then when within that little interview, 30-minute segment, we do all these 7 things. And I mentioned earlier, it really fits better into 45 minutes. We're just always experimenting and changing our schedule up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you find that, and you do this is a daily thing that you do? It's not like, this is every day schedule.
Okay, we do Monday through Thursday. And then some things on the interview we're rotating every other time. Like Plutarch and picture studies, those we're rotating.
Keri, you might want to show her that your column here shows what you're doing. You're interviewing Thomas here, Eliza here, Joseph here. You're doing your own math practice, but go ahead and talk.
Okay, so I know it just looks like a busy schedule. If I had thought about this and highlighted certain sections in advance, I would have shown you that I'm with certain kids for a very specific reason, and I'm near other kids for a specific reason, and I'm away from other kids for a specific reason. So just so you know, I didn't put these all in just however they would fit. I put people with me that need to be with me on every single subject. So the reason I'm doing dishes while almost everyone else is doing their stewardship is because I need to be nearby when they work. Some of them, I don't need to be nearby them, but it helps with the momentum of the other children to see their older siblings working so responsibly. There's a momentum with the work. So we put that together for a reason. Then Thomas is the second line. That just means I'm interviewing Thomas. Then Eliza, then Joseph, then I do my own math, then I do my own reading. Then I interview Gabe, and then Ian, and then I exercise with the children. Then I interview, this is a very short interview because my older children have mentors for almost everything. And they just do a couple of things with me off that list. Mostly they just narrate. They each only get 15 minutes. Then I have lunch, I clean up with the kids, and I do nature study with them. So I would say, in a nutshell, the children under 8 are with me 100%. The children 8 to 12 are with me or someone kind of like me, someone that's watching over and supervising the lesson. Almost 100%, 75%. They read and memorize by themselves, and they play their instruments. But when they're beginning their instruments, they play them. I have to be there to get some good habits set in. The children 12 and up, the children 12 to 14 are with me or someone like me, probably 25% of their lessons. And the children 14 and up, they're only with someone when it's time to check in. They do everything else alone.
On the 12 to 14-year-olds, when they do the 15-minute interview and you said they just narrate, what are they narrating?
They're narrating what they've read.
that morning or that day?
Ideally, it would be that day because we have so many kids doing this right now. We have the ones that can handle it, they narrate what they read the day before because it didn't fit in the schedule to give them each an interview after their reading. Some of them have to come to interview and then read afterward. Like, look at Eliza. Eliza, Latin. Okay, she's column E. Latin stewardship interview. So she's narrating what she read a day earlier because she can handle it. Other ones, they have to come right after they read because it is more difficult. I have one that is on the autistic spectrum. It's more difficult for him to keep things straight in his mind. And so he has to come to me. He has to come to the interview after he reads. So it just depends, on the child.
Does your day end at 2?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then what
This schedule ends at 2. Yeah.
does SS mean under Grace's?
That's time reserved for her scholar studies. Somebody else mentors her in a scholar program and gives her assignments.
And then you said you do Plutarch and picture study. Is Plutarch just because this year you're doing Greece? That would change next year?
Okay, I heard most of that. You said, is that because this year what?
You're studying ancient Greece and next year you'll do someone else, or is Plutarch all years, all the time?
I think we'll do it all years, all the time. Only I'm such a beginner in putting this all together. I started trying to do Charlotte Mason 2 whole years ago. And we didn't start Plutarch until this year because I just added one little thing at a time. We started with just reading, math, and nature study. And I suppose we'll do Plutarch all the time.
So does your day, do your kids get up at 6:45 and start the day at 7, or when do they get up?
It depends on the age. The ones that are 8 and up get up at 5, and we all do yoga together, and my husband leads it. And then we all disperse at 5:30 to go get ready for the day. And and also during that time, I get the little ones ready. And then we meet at 6 o'clock for scripture study. And then we have breakfast. And then we all work from about 7 to 8 on our stewardships. And the little ones' stewardships is just to clean up the kitchen with me. And the others have more exciting stewardships where they're learning some house skills and stuff like cooking and laundry and things.
And then at 2, sometime after 2, is that when you do the handcrafts?
Oh, so the handcrafts, this is what we decided. We were doing them both, like nature study and handcrafts, one at 1 o'clock and one at 1:30. But we realized as the winter's coming on, we were about to lose our very last few chances to draw anything alive before we're on trees right now. And the trees are quickly losing their leaves. So we decided, let's do our projects in the winter when things are dormant. Let's do a half an hour project. And then let's do a half an hour, just a winter walk out in the snow to make sure we're not hibernating. And let's alternate that walk with some other things that are fun to learn about in nature that you don't go out and draw, like birds. Birds don't hold still. So it's really hard to draw them. So in the past, we've drawn them in the winter from a bird book where it's a perfect still shot and you have time to think about the details. Then the next day you take a walk and see if you can find any of the birds you've been drawing. So we just decided, let's save projects and handicrafts for winter, do it half an hour, take the other half an hour and alternate walks and bird drawing.
So the nature study now, just trying to make sure I understand, nature study would be in the fall or in the spring?
Spring, summer, and fall.
Spring, summer, and fall. And the handwork crafts would be in the winter. And the nature walk would alternate with drawing inside or walking outside.
Yep.
And that is all year, or just in the winter you alternate that nature walk?
We would just alternate it because in the spring, summer, and fall, our nature walk and our nature study is one thing. We take a walk either to a place in our field or a neighbor's house or something down the road that we find, and we sit there together and everybody draws a tree, whatever one they choose. And then we have these tree books. We try to identify them, and it's very difficult. And so they need help. And it's difficult for me too. Sometimes it'll take days before we've really identified and that we're sure which tree it is. So, one day I'm sitting helping one child on what they're stuck on. We're searching through the book and reading all these details. Are the veins thick on the leaf, or are they thin, or are they protruding, or are they not? We're looking into every little detail so we can be sure. And the others who don't need me right then are drawing a tree. And then the next day they probably need me, and the others will be drawing a tree. So we're just going together so that I'm always there, and we get clues from each other. We may be stuck on one, and my son will say, "Oh, I drew that one 3 months ago, and I really think it's this one," and he'll help us.
Okay, I just have 2 more questions, then I'll stop. The first one is, recommend a favorite place to get topics on the nature and handicraft studies. And the second is, how do you keep all of your children from needing you all at once? Not saying that happens to me, but when we, as a family, it gets kind of dicey.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so a good resource for, did you say handicraft projects and nature study subjects?
Yes.
Ambleside is a good place for I guess for both. Well, I don't know on the handicrafts. I haven't looked at it much, but I assume it's a good resource. Seems to be a good resource for everything. But the nature study, I just started thinking, like, what's out there? We have trees. We have weeds, wild herbs and weeds of some kind. We have wild flowers. We have bushes.
But Keri, we have bugs. Interrupt just a minute. Ambleside Online really does give a good description of what you do and how you think about it. And then you can go out and do, those things that Keri's talking about are natural.
Okay.
Keri.
Okay.
Can I say something really quick? Just along those lines? Just a recommendation. I have a book right here. It's one that I really enjoy. It's called Keeping a Nature Journal. Don't know if you can see that. And I really like it as far as, it's not going to tell you the what to go study necessarily, but kind of lots of really great ideas on how to keep a nature journal. I really like it. So just a recommendation.
And let me add this, like Julie said, once you start, it comes so naturally. I also was always looking for resources and trying to decide what exactly we were doing. And finally, I just said, you know what? I've just got to get outside or I'm never going to start actually doing this. So I made up my own way, and it's so fun. Anything that comes to mind, I say to the children. I'll say, oh, put the date on there. Put the date you drew that. And I'll say, draw the whole tree and draw a branch and draw a leaf in great detail. So we have many different views of the tree. And just the other day I said, oh, write a description of the bark. And I think there are 100 ways to do it. But what's fun is if you really start doing it and sticking to it, your eyes become open to nature and your heart, and you just become alive to it, to things that maybe were dead to you before. It's my other very favorite part of the day. Nature study and listening to the narrations are the most thrilling. Okay, your second question, do we have time? A couple minutes. You said, say it one more time. It was about keeping everything straight.
Just how do you make sure all your kids don't need you at once?
Okay, so this is why it's really nice to have the stewardships all together at first when they're little. The older they get, they can branch off and do their work far away from me. But my children have to master certain levels of responsibility in their work before I allow them to do lessons. So we work out the kinks during that 7 to 8 o'clock. And as we were figuring out how to do Charlotte Mason, it was overwhelming. And there was a time that we had quite a bit of hired help. And my children had less stewardship. They always have had some work, but there was less stewardship so that we could put a lot more energy into figuring out the lessons, mostly for my sake, so that I could wrap my brain around how to do all this. And I'm happier having us do most all of the work. I don't mind hiring some things out, that may be extra. But what I found is once they progress through some of those core issues and they begin to be responsible, and I can trust them to study and not need me as much, because the same skills they gain in the work, the self-discipline and the concentration, the ability to do hard things, an appreciation for what they have, all that comes from work. They apply that to their studies. But I have noticed that even when they progress and perfect a lot of those things, they still need court phase a little every single day. So I really am a fan of, no matter what your financial situation is, requiring the children to do a good hour of stewardship every day. And it's really fun to do it together. We just sing at the top of our lungs while we work. And everybody sees what everybody else does because we try to pull it all into the same room as much as possible. So a little kid who doesn't know anything about ironing has been watching somebody iron next to him for an hour every day while he dries dishes. And the other day when that so-and-so was sick, who irons, I said, "Do you think you could iron?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you know how the iron works?" Yeah, he knew exactly how it worked. And anyway, it's just really fun to do that hour of work together. It's kind of like exercise. We're just working hard and going as fast as we can. And that I say was the most important factor to the success of our homeschools, that we work together. And if we don't get it done, they have to stop and be on time to their first lesson, and they have to finish it in their free time. And that obviously is very valuable.
Thank you.
And just so you can tell us when that free time is. I assume
2 o'clock.
Yeah, 2
Now,
o'clock.
it depends on the age. 2 o'clock, I'm saying, because almost everyone on this list is between 8 and 12. But there are younger ones, like C. Thomas. His free time starts at 9. And then it picks back up at 2. And Maxwell, who's 4, his free time starts after he folds a basket of towels, 7:20. And it just goes all day long.
Thank you. Becky had just a couple of questions that haven't been touched on. I know we're almost out of time. I just wonder if you have a minute, you could answer these. I think they're fast. What are some of your exercising activities, and what books do you use for picture study?
Okay. Yeah, I can do that real quickly. And then I have a class starting right now too. I'll just go to it a couple minutes late. But right now we just jog, and partway through the jog, we stretch, and then we finish jogging. And then we do our Euclid,
That's what your class is.
We do our yoga in the morning. Another thing we've done that I just absolutely adore is we've had a private ballet teacher come in and teach the children. So then they don't do it together because they don't get as much out of it if they're all together. They do one-on-one. And then their exercise, would show up all different times in the day. We've also had a gymnastics teacher come in and do the same thing on a rotation. But I love the jogging too. And then the nature study walk is great. We go a long ways sometimes on that. These books I love. We have about 10 of them. This one's Monet. Let me quickly just see who the publisher is.
Yeah.
Okay, Monet, His Life and Works in 500 Images. Susie Hodge. I guess that's the author.
Okay, so that's the author.
Maybe I should give the ISBN number. Do you want that?
Sure, and then we do need to let you go because we understand. So what's the
Okay.
ISBN?
ISBN is 978-0
Okay.
-7548 -1953 -0. As the children get older, we have them not just do picture study and nature study, picture study. We have them do art history, like art study. And then they will read these books that are full of their pictures, also have the stories of their lives and so many details. And so it's older children to read them. I flip through and read because there's quite a bit of nudity, and I just like to pick and choose what pictures they're staring at when they're little.
Thank you very much, Keri.
You're welcome.
We feel uplifted, and we know you've got your Euclid waiting for you. But, this is how we clap online. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening, and thank you, everyone. And I'm very sorry again about the link. That was a mess up at the very beginning, and we should have had educational in-services all this whole fall, but some of us have moved and went through some great changes, and this was our first educator in service. So my first opportunity to know that I messed up. But Keri, if you want to leave, you just go down to the bottom right, and it says leave meeting.
Okay, I'll do that. And if anybody wants to ask a question about this, Julie has my email, and you're welcome to email me a question.
Thank you, Keri.
Okay. Good night.
Keri, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
everyone.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Hey, Julie.
Yeah.
I was just gonna mention for anyone who wants to stay and chat, I have available time, and I'm sure lots of you have to go too. But I'll hang out for a few minutes if anyone wants to chat or ask questions regarding this or something else. I'll stick around for a few minutes.
I can do that too. I haven't eaten dinner yet, but I can stick around. So Kimberly, you know Keri. Jolene and not Kylie, Becky, you know Keri because you're all from her area. And you've been to her house. She's pretty organized, but she followed that first book in Charlotte Mason that talks about how to organize your home, that your children are just obedient. They just are obedient. And she's perfected that. And I'm still working on that with ages 12 and 15 at home. So, but that really is the key to helping your children focus on the things that they do focus on. So.
You know, something I really liked about what she was saying, because I was doing Ambleside curriculum a couple of years ago and going through all of these different subjects that Charlotte Mason says. But I like how she incorporates it into an interview. You know, that's a really TJ Ed concept, is having your interviews with your kids. And I like how she kind of incorporates the subjects that she wants to be hitting on into those interviews and has them going back and forth. I was thinking as she was talking in terms of how I could use these things with my own kids since they're doing the Monarch classes, but I still need to be checking in with them. You know, some of my kids, even though I'm teaching the pre-scholar history, I have to sit down and be checking in with Riley about that. And so I like the idea of incorporating an interview. And so in our interview, when we get to timeline, well, we're working on the timeline that my kid, you know, that the kids are working on in history. And the recitation and is, you know, Charlotte Mason Treat Topics that we have that class. And so I like how you could just, I'm going to look at this and work in an interview each day, I think, and then just pick out the things that I need to be checking in with my kids on with the classes that they're taking through Monarch. So I thought that was really helpful. Just kind of a different way of thinking about it for me.
It kind of culminates everything all into one little place and time that you can be with your children and check up on all those things and let them perform, like she said. But did anybody else like something that rang true to them or that they might be inspired with that you want to share? Jessica, you want to share something? Oh, go ahead, Becky. Oh, Jessica, you're muted.
I'm looking, but there was quite a bit. I think for me, I was just in awe with how she can segment everything into 30 minutes amongst 6.
And you
So-
probably noticed there were 8 names on there because she's taken in 2 of our nephews. So Gabe is very autistic Ian is very autistic, and Gabe is his younger brother that's not autistic, but she's taking in 8. So she just didn't have her youngest son on there, but yeah, she's very organized. But go ahead.
Let me look over my notes and then I'll chime in again.
Okay. Go ahead, Becky.
The question that I had is Plutarch's Lives. I don't know very much about Plutarch's Lives and how that, how you would have discussions and stuff. So I need to do a little bit of research, but I want to ask you while I've got you right here, what is Plutarch's Lives? And
Okay.
Can I take that really quick?
Sure.
In terms of, because Kylie's in the history class,
Yeah.
so the people that she's been reading about in history are the people from Plutarch's Lives. Plutarch was a historian who wrote about different people that lived in ancient Greece and
Rome.
And Rome, yes, thank you. And in the pre-scholar version, we've been tackling abridged versions of those lives because it is very difficult. But in the badges for the pre-scholar history class, there's actually a link to the Ambleside Online has an amazing study guide for Plutarch. And so you can go and look at it there. And it'll have what I like about, I believe it's Thomas North's translation that it uses, but it has a section of a life. It splits it into 10 lessons, and then it will give you vocab ahead of time. If you don't have a ton of time to be, searching through everything ahead of time, it has a list of vocab that you're probably not going to be familiar with, and then it has the short reading, and by short, it's actually pretty long, and it is very difficult. And then it has some questions that you can ask. And I really like that resource from Ambleside Online. Like I said, you can find it in the badges for the pre-scholar. But those are Plutarch's Lives. It's just a collection of so many Greeks and Romans.
I'd like to chime in too. Charlotte Mason says that in order for a child to really become a beautiful soul, they must read these lives and study them, and you can go slowly with them, but you're basically focusing on their characters and maybe some of the mistakes they've made, but mostly about their noble character, and letting the child just experience the greatness in these people. And so that's the major point of that, and you go slowly with it.
thank you. I need to find Plutarch's Lives.
You can get the North version, which is written in the it's the 1500s, I believe. It's the version that Shakespeare used to write most all of his histories and tragedies. But let's see, I bought 2 copies, one for my daughter and one for me, 2 volumes. I paid about $25 for both of them. Now they're going up a little bit, but you can get them used on Amazon.com. I'll show you what one looks like. I'll be right back while Randy's showing you something.
So there's different versions of it, and the North is what she said, right? That she likes. You're muted, Randy.
There we go. I was trying to, while I was screen sharing, trying to figure out how to unmute. So Thomas North is one of the translators of it. And I was just going to show this because it's not, when you jump into here, it's not readily, easy to understand. So on AmblesideOnline.org, off to the side here, there's a link for Plutarch, and you just click on that, and it's going to bring you to here. And there's great resources here, like who is he and why do we read him? what year do we begin reading Plutarch? And these are all from the Charlotte Mason perspective. But the section I was telling you about, if you scroll down, see way down here, Charlotte Mason does talk about reading Plutarch all year long, every year. And for the reasons like Julie was saying, because reading Plutarch isn't necessarily for history, though you gain great history. Plutarch wrote it in terms of morals, in terms of lessons about good and bad. In fact, I've read things that talk about Plutarch's accuracy in history is somewhat debated sometimes because he was more interested in a good moral. So anyways, Charlotte Mason, or I should say Ambleside Online, has split it up into a 6-year rotation of studying Plutarch. And so you have the life of Marcus Cato, you have each of these different lives that they're studying, that they've split up into different years. And then if you click on, see how it says Study Guide of Thomas North's text? If you click on that, so all of this is going to be about Marcus Cato, the censor. And then it says, who is he? What is a censor? And then you have the lessons. So lesson 1, you have an introduction, vocabulary, and then here's your reading. And the reading comes down, down, down. And then narration and discussion. And a few questions about him. I've been really impressed. I used this all for an entire year, a year and a half ago, and then we come back to it when we're looking for specifics. But if you scroll down, this is all the life. This is just one life, and there's usually about 12 lessons per life. So it's just a good resource.
Here's what this book looks like. It's about this thick, and this is only volume 2. I just grabbed volume 2. But this was published in 1941. So you can find them online. And the words would be like, let me just read the very beginning just so you kind of see. This is Nicias, the informer. No, Nicias. Okay, so this is it. I have reason, as I think, to compare Nicias with Crassus and the events that happened to the one in Parthia with those that befell the other in Sicily. Yet am I to pray them that should happen to read my writings, not to think me in intermeddling with those matters, in the describing and reporting whereof Thucydides hath gone beyond himself. Both, you can see how it gets a little tough, so you just maybe read a half a sentence, but this is the thing that you read to them, according to what Keri was saying. I've looked at the Ambleside Online, and that's more for an older child that can understand more, that has read these harder things.
So is this something that if we had time in the second semester for the history that the children were going to get into more? That I don't remember if that was on the book list for like the second semester for the history class. Was that Randy?
So jumping into Plutarch's Lives.
Uh-huh.
So with your pre-scholars, you have, the pre-scholars are going to be at different levels. And it's all dependent too on how much time you have to work with your kids. Okay. So a beginning pre-scholar could not just jump into Plutarch's Lives by themselves and read it. Probably an end pre-scholar could not just jump into Plutarch's Lives and understand it. But with your help, at any level, you could sit down and read together. Now, like some of those names that Julie just read, even what she was saying, Crassus and Thucydides, these are people that the kids of the pre-scholar history class will be familiar with because we've been talking about the stories of their lives this whole time, but just not in the same language that Julie was just reading. So say next semester, if you sat down with Kylie and you said, you know what, you spent a lot of time talking about Agesilaus, and you really enjoyed the story of Agesilaus. Let's go find him in Plutarch's Lives and read about that one life. And that would be, I think, a really great way to do that. And my dog is
just spend a couple of just a few minutes every day, just 10 minutes. You read, she narrates. Well, you first scan for words. So this is something that you do. This whole in-service was what moms can do besides what they're learning. In Randy's and my classes, a lot of times we focus more on dates and things and events. But really, Charlotte Mason said, a soul becomes beautiful if they study the lives of the noble Greeks and Romans. And that's the mom's job, is to help their child become beautiful souls.
Yeah. Well, I looked up because I thought it was that book that was on the If We Have Time, but it's like a Caesar book, and I just put it down.
Oh, yeah, that's a different one.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what I was wondering, if that's what that one was.
No,
Okay.
that's a different one. But one just example of how it can be really neat to read these Plutarch's lives. Riley, my daughter, she's 12, we were reading, and I remember specifically reading about Crassus and reading through his life, and it was slow, and we took it super slow. But there were certain, stories of things that he did. He wasn't the most scrupulous person. Am I even saying that right? He, was the type that would show up to these houses that had just burned down and buy them for cheap so that he could get ahead in life. And just all these things that Plutarch talked about, how, what he would do to get ahead, and, kind of the morals that are set on the side when you're grabbing for power. And it was really neat to see the things that we were reading popping up in our day-to-day life. And I can't remember the specifics, but I'm trying to remember exactly what she was comparing it to. But I remember one day, Riley said, "Oh, that person just reminds me of Crassus," and then said why. And to be able to have these really deep analogies that she could make and say, this is a person who acted this way, and I see this character trait coming out in somebody else, and I don't like that. And then she can internalize, I want to be another way. This is what I want to be like. And so it really develops their character. I totally recommend, diving into the Plutarch's lives.
I just wanted to show you that here it is, The Lives of the Noble Grecians and Romans, in 2 volumes, volume 1 and volume 2. And you can see that this one is $24.01 plus shipping, but it's only acceptable. But down here, you're getting, this price. So you just kind of keep looking. They show up all the time. So
I think I have one in my basket of like 101 books.
I do recommend the study guides, though. Study guides are helpful, especially if you're new to Plutarch. It was a lot to chew when I first started reading Plutarch. The study guides were really helpful to me.
Julie and Randy,
yes.
I have a question. This is more of a philosophical question because I'm totally new to Charlotte Mason. This is the first year that I've kind of gotten acquainted with their principles. So I'm sort of wondering, coming from a TJ Ed model, how you merge Charlotte Mason with the inspire, not require kind of, how does that work together?
I can kind of answer that. When a child is ready to learn, that's when, like the scholar level, I'm requiring all of the students to do certain things. And if they don't, then they just don't get the credit for what they're not learning. There's more responsibility on them. With Keri, as you noticed, the only thing that was required was the children are pretty much coming to her to report, but they're reading books that they want to read. Let's see, the first level of reading is what they want to read. The second level is she's just bringing over a harder book, and she's choosing out words, and then she's having them read and then narrate. And this is just in that little short interview time. And then you read to them. So it's not like you're going off and saying, go read Plutarch's Lives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the way we set up Monarch is kind of Charlotte Mason, but Charlotte Mason's going to happen much better with you. And we're kind of TJ Ed modeling a little bit of Charlotte Mason, but we really can't do much of that. That's the mom's. Go ahead, Randy.
I was just going to say, while Charlotte Mason goes into a lot of how as well, it's really good reading. I see her as a lot of the what, and TJ Ed is more of the how. So Charlotte Mason has some things that she emphasizes. She emphasizes habits and talking about building habits with kids. She emphasizes there's certain hows on the lessons, like she says, especially when the kids are young, and this is referring to younger kids, that you have very short lessons, but you have lots of them throughout the day. And then as soon as you see that you're losing their interest, you move to something else. She talks about living books, which are people that are, books that are written by people who are passionate. You can feel the passion of what they're writing coming through. As I was reading about living books the other day, I was almost thinking, yay, and living mentors. You want people that your kids are learning from, and books that they're reading from to be inspiring. And then narration is something that Charlotte Mason is really big on, and dictation and art and music and nature study. And so as I looked, as you look at the interview list, a lot of those things that Keri was touching on are the what. And I would say that the TJ Ed methodology of learning is is the how. So we inspire, not require, classics, not textbooks, all of our 7 keys. So I'm actually working on a paper to kind of say how Monarch merges those 2 things. But that was my initial thoughts, is that Charlotte Mason is more about the what, and TJ Ed is more about the how. And so we try to incorporate into Monarch with our writing classes. We have dictation. We're going to be having a composer study coming up. The Charlotte Mason Treat Topics class that some of you are in, we cover nature study and